Hello and welcome to the Smart Connections podcast and the Talk the Path podcast. My name is Anna Sanderlin. I am a warm-line facilitator for the University of Memphis Smart Center. The University of Memphis School of Social Work Smart Research, Training, and Treatment Center aims to provide evidence-based interventions for school-based mental health programming, increase access for school-based behavioral health programming in underserved areas, offer training on best practices in telebehavioral health, develop opportunities to research the use of technology in practice, and provide direct services to the state's most vulnerable populations. You can call the Smart Center at 901-678-1636. The University of Memphis Smart Center, in conjunction with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, would like to present the Pathways to Behavioral Health Careers Project. The goals of the Pathways Project are to provide education and information on the various career opportunities in the field of behavioral health through presentations, increase interest in students in the field of behavioral health, provide opportunities for guidance with information regarding college, university programming that result in degrees for professions in the field of behavioral health, connect students with students in behavioral health programs and professionals in the field for further research. This podcast will feature students and professionals in the field to give a clear picture of the daily duties of these roles and how they help support their communities.
My name is Francis Garcia, and it's a joy to be with you this morning to share my lived experience in the work field of mental health and public health. I'm really excited to get the word out and get the mission out that we need more of you all who are seeking higher education to be interested in these areas. This is somewhere where you get to serve.
Mr. Garcia, we're just going to jump right in with our first question. And I know us and everyone who will be listening to this podcast later are just very curious and ready to hear more about you. So for our first question, can you just please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, I am so passionate about advocating for mental health services and public health services. I really do believe in empowering our community. That's something that I've been very passionate about for a very long time. Originally, I'm from the Dominican Republic. I was born there when I was 8 years old, and I transitioned to the United States at the age of 9. Grew up in Miami, Florida, primarily, where I experienced firsthand the challenges of living in an underserved community, limited to resources, stigma surrounding mental health, and systematic barriers to care. Thereafter, I went to the military at the age of 17 after some traumatic events in my childhood youth. I am bilingual. I'm a U.S. veteran, served in the Army. I also have a master's in public health and social change from the University of Bellarmine University, which is located in Kentucky. I believe in helping and assisting our next generation with our lived experiences to empower them to reach higher and go farther.
Awesome, Mr. Garcia. I would like to know, how did you determine to take your life experiences and use it to help others?
I would say that it was determined for me. I would say that, there were individuals in my life and within that community as I experienced the impacts of poverty, violence, and lack of access that encouraged me, that empowered me to think, to be a critical thinker, be a strategic thinker. I was an artist. I was a poet. I was a lot of things before I became a 45-year-old male in the public health field. And I believe those experiences are what shaped me. Early on in my teen years, I lost several friends to gun violence. My best friend actually died in my arms in the city of Liberty City. I grew up in a place called Pork and Bean Projects. It was a very harsh environment, to say the least. We did not go to school. We went to gladiator school. So by the time I hit high school, I had been suspended out of multiple schools. My environment dictated my action tremendously. So those experiences, as I would always say, are the experiences that shape who I've become.
That's awesome. It's really beautiful. Thank you for giving us insight into that. It's always great to hear stories about how individuals came to their profession, because we learn that the passion and the reason behind it really hits home and it's personal. So you live the experiences, and I'm sure you apply that to your work and everything that you do as well, to the families, the kids that you come across. And so for our next question, who are you currently mentoring and working with within the community?
So when you use the word mentoring, to me, it means that you do this in every capacity, not just with one individual, but you do it at every facet of the community. It means that you level up. Yeah, you do it with the individual, but you do it in the middle and you do it up above, right? Meaning that you work with every institution to ensure that those that you're mentoring get everything that they need. I currently create programs across the state to ensure that our most vulnerable are protected. I work for TN Voices and been working with them for about 4.5 years to ensure that we create access to mental health resources. We work with our state representatives. We work with nonprofits. We work with city and county government as well as all of our school districts across the state of Tennessee. Now, when I think about the word mentoring and the individual attachment to that, there are several young men that I work with, and I'll share a brief story with you that I think makes an impact. There's a young man that I met 2.5 years ago. And I went into the school and I was a keynote speaker. Subsequently, this young man came from Nashville, was growing up in a very wealthy place with some foster parents because both of his parents were incarcerated. And I took a liking to this young man, and we sat down and we drafted what I called his life plan. And his life plan was to have him look forward at to what would his life look like in 5 to 6 years. And he had to make a decision per every individual that he was related to: his sister, his brother at the time that was 12 years old, his father, and his mother. And in that life plan, he also had to decide what his relationship will look like and where those individuals will be in their lifetime. Well, regarding his 14-year-old brother, he said, "Mr. Garcia, my 14-year-old brother will either be incarcerated or he will be deceased." Well, last year in November, we buried his 14-year-old brother.
Oh, wow.
He was shot in the back in Nashville at a house party.
Mm.
And that young man called me. Now, why did he call me? I asked myself when he called, and I got off the phone. And I'm a man of faith. And he asked me if I would come be with him to bury his brother. And I went to that church. And I walked into that church downtown Nashville. And I looked at this beautiful little black boy, one of the cleanest fades I've ever seen on somebody, dressed from head to toe. But all I saw was a body. There was no soul. There was no life. And I realized that this young man, his brother, knew that he had to part ways with his brother. He didn't think at the time that which he decided when we went on his life plan will become real, but it did. It did. And I had to be the adult because he didn't have somebody who looked like him in his life to help him look forward to his life plan. And we had to sit down and we had to look at it again. And he had to make a decision to leave MTSU and go to Kentucky to play running back. He's currently a freshman in college. He has a promise in front of his life. Subsequently, he can be sitting right here in the same podcast 10 years from now, telling his story. That's the kind of difference that mentorship can make. So I get to work not just with him, but, and these are things that I do outside of my work. I do this because somebody did it for me, and this is my way to serve. This is my way to pay it forward. So if you get that chance and that opportunity with your friends, with your family members, check on your people, because we want to make it to where they're able to tell us that they're not okay. And if you're not okay, what is my responsibility to be able to mentor you in a way that is meaningful?
Mm-hmm. And I think that sheds beautiful light on the importance of doing life with people. I love how you highlighted the word mentorship because it's both and. It's like, yes, helping someone, like you said, build a life plan and, leading them to all the goals and helping them set out a 5-year plan, whatever the case may be. But it's also showing them that you care, that you are willing to do the hard things with them, so that maybe they'll be more receptive to whatever else mentorship entails. And so I love that great example that you gave about that young man.
Yeah. And the other side, since I started from the top down and they're in between, is that we also, when you take the word mentor, it has to mentor back to the systems that are trying to assist us. We have to be able to advocate, to package this information, the need of our communities, back to the system that's supposed to create resources and services for us to benefit from. I get to do that here locally where I currently live in Wilson County in the city of Lebanon. I took a group of people, I funded a project with a middle school. And thank God to my wife that she gave me the okay to do this. And we funded that project. That project was called 7 on 7. And I invited 7 men to come tell 7 reasons why they are who they are. I didn't want lawyers. I didn't want athletes. I wanted lawyers, architects. I wanted people from that particular sector to come and speak to these kids. And that became a success. Thereafter, we reached out to the Titans. The Titans provided us with tickets for the kids. Some of these kids had never been outside of Lebanon, Tennessee. Mm. And we're talking about this is less than 25 minutes away. Now, for a guy like me who has traveled, who has been to many different stadiums and has had many different experiences, I realized how much of a difference that moment made for some of those kids. One kid was crying when he got out of the car when he looked up at that stadium. Mm-hmm. Now, that same kid, there were freshmen, they were in middle school at the time. That was last year. They're freshmen on the Lebanon High School football team now. And those kids are some of the best athletes. That passion to create access, to advocate for them, drove them to want more out of life. And that project, that 7 on 7, birthed something even bigger that the community is now supporting. We're going to be bringing the Boys and Girls Club to Wilson County. But you know who came and spoke to the adults who went to city and county government and advocated for themselves after being trained by us? Those same young people that were in that room. Wow. We planned a dinner. We had a dinner, which is so beautiful to share. And I know that y'all just get to hear what we're saying, but we have visuals behind all of this. We planned a dinner at the Lebanon Golf Club, and we invited all of the people who are important. We invited our city mayor, our county mayor, our state representative, our judges. We invited the judge from the juvenile court center to come and listen to these kids. And they stood in front of us and they said, hey, we don't have enough here. We have food insecurity issues. We have no places to gather and mingle. We have no access to STEM programming, which is so important to our future and our future generations. And from that, the Boys and Girls Club was birthed. This past Friday, we signed our MOU. We have a finance committee. We have a building committee that's looking for a building. We have ministers and pastors and leaders from every aspect of the community, not just Black, not just white, not just Hispanic. We have people from all walks of life. We have 35 people on the advisory board that are all shepherding this project forward. Again, mentorship starts with the individual, true enough, but mentorship looks to bring back to the individuals that which they need.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it definitely shows the importance of planting seeds in men life. Just wow. I that's a lot. I wanted to ask you, what's one of the most rewarding moments you've had working with young men? You've clearly already listed a lot of good ones, but
well, I will tell you that it is very rewarding when you get to do things on a big scale, because the individual thing is always very intimate, is always very self-rewarding, right? But when you do it in a way that it impacts not just one person, but it impacts in a way that you won't get to see it, it would outlive you, right? That is where I say God, where you find the God service in you. Right. Again, I go back to I'm a man of faith. So everything that I do is to serve in some capacity. Right. One of the most meaningful moments I would say was 3 o'clock in the morning. I got up. I couldn't sleep. I drove to the gas station, not far away from my home. I walked into the gas station and I met a young man that was working at the gas station. And I went and got my coffee, came back to the register, and the young man says to me, "Sir, what do you do?" I was like, what made you ask me that? I'm in flip-flops and shorts. He was like, well, you look like you're somebody that I can learn from and you drive a nice car. Is what he said to me. And I said, well, if I can tell you anything, the one thing that made a big difference in my life was the Army. And the young man started crying in front of me. And I said, man, you okay? I was like, man, I got some time. You want to step outside? There's nobody here. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to drink this coffee because I can't sleep. We stood outside of the gas station and we talked till the sun came up. Long story short, the young man said he wanted to learn how to get ready for the Army. I said, well, I'll tell you what are you doing tomorrow? I said, if you want to train to go to the military, I'll train you. And I went to my gym. I talked to the owner of the gym at Anytime Fitness and we started training. And I did everything possible to break that young man's will, and he would not break. He will not break, because in our communities, we experience challenges that builds resiliency that most people don't understand. And his will was so strong that he did not break. And I took that young man running for 6.5 miles. He never threw up. He never broke. We did 150 push-ups that same day. Long story short, that young man is now in South Korea in the United States Army. That is the most meaningful thing that I've shared with you all this morning that I have not shared with many people.
So did he have intentions to already go to the Army and you were just like a confirmation for him, or?
No, he was a young man that was homeless. He was working at a gas station. He had 2 kids already. His baby mama had put him out. He was living behind the gas station and working there part-time and working at Ruby Tuesday next door part-time. I ended up working with a homeless shelter in Lebanon called the Hearn House. I knew the guy there that managed the Hearn House. I contacted him after I started training the young man. I said, man, I just need him to have somewhere to sleep and rest his mind while we do this. Can you let him stay with you all for about 3.5 months? And that's exactly what they did. They didn't have to pay a penny. Good people are looking to do good things intentionally. That young man, we changed his path. His path was to be an African-American 6'3" young man, multiple baby mamas, own child support, no career path, and subsequently, perhaps more than likely, would have ended up getting some sort of charge on his record that would have derailed the plan that had God for him. God just happened to utilize me to intercede. Right? Whatever he saw on me, that's why I'm telling you, whatever room you walk into, be intentional to be your very best. I don't care what you have going on, because at the time I was going through some life crisis myself. However, nobody saw that on me, right? I had just had back surgery. And after having back surgery, I got hit by a truck while I was crossing a pedestrian walkway. I had to lay back on my back again. When I met that young man, I put my mess aside and I saw that somebody needed me more. And because of that, because of my willingness, I tell you this humbly, it's not that I am who I am. All that I'm saying is, if you are always ready to serve your friends, your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, you will be used in that regard. What about if I walked into that gas station and I was carrying an attitude of not willing to help, or not willing to assist, or not make eye contact, or not just be utilizing my soft touch to say, hey, good morning, how you doing? So forth and so on. I invited him to tell me that he wasn't okay. There was a lot that young man was experiencing that I found out along the way. His father incarcerated, his mother abandoned him. He had no family support, no warmth, no love, no caring in his life. And somebody looked at him and saw more than that. All that I am saying, take me out of that picture, and you should be able to put yourself in that same picture that I was in. That's the life that we want to live and that we should live.
Yeah, that's, you made me think about something, how in our culture, or I guess a cultural norm, could be just asking people, how are you? And like in passing conversation. I came across someone a while ago, and they said, instead of asking, how are you? They asked, how's your heart? And in so many words, that's basically what you allowed that young man to do, was to spill out his heart, what he's going through. And just taking the time not to just hear him, but assist and guide him along the way. I mean, it's very hard to come by someone who would take the time out of the day, be humble enough to help, and really walk you through that. So that is a great story. And kind of in that same vein, because I hear your stories, how you are able to, regardless of their specific need, you find a way to assist and you find a way to get things done. So if you had any chance or the opportunity to expand or have additional services, unlimited resources, what's one thing you would change or add to your work?
One of the things that I would add is more funding. I will add more funding to and training to our nonprofits. When I worked in state government for a very long time, we created a mini grant writing program across the state in partnership with various schools. Lemoyne was one of those schools. Lipscomb Academy was one of those schools. East ETSU as well. And that mini grant project looked like this. We will go in and we will meet with nonprofits. We would see that they were doing meaningful work, and we wanted to add to that. So then we invited those nonprofits executive directors to come and be trained in grant writing across the state. That's how I became a grant writer. I helped start the program, and subsequently, because I was in the room so much, I was like, hey, that's something I need to add to me. And I became a grant writer because of it. That is something that I'm very passionate about, because we have so many moms and pops, nonprofits that are trying to just pick their community up. But if we were able to empower them a little bit better than we have currently and train them up, we can have communities that thrive. That the resources that are actually intentional to go into a community, not just look at the data, but go into the community and find those nonprofits that are already having that relationship, whether it's a Mr. Kelly that's in the Baptist church that's already volunteering their time, and they created a nonprofit to minimize teen pregnancy, for example, right? How do I go in and how do I empower that nonprofit to bring those rates down? How do we do that better? Because till we do that, we will always find ourselves going around in a circle. Instead of being reactive, it's what I call being proactive. That's the one thing when I look at the public health spectrum. And that's why I love public health, because I can go into any facet of healthcare. I worked in public health for a long time. Now I'm in mental health, something I'm very passionate about. But that will be the one thing that I would change, is how intentional are we to bring those resources that are more meaningful to us than to others and strengthen them in our community.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. I would say,
Yes.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about, it's just kind of been on my mind. You were talking about how you showing young men different paths instead of like basketball and football and stuff. That's just been on my mind lately. I think that's so cool.
I'll tell you the reason why. I'll tell you. So I'm a person that I have to touch it, feel it, see it. So for example, the not wanting those people in front of kids, right? I helped start a football league in Middle Tennessee. And the one thing that I was known for is that I always wanted the kids that nobody wanted, right? What people don't know about youth football is that we put all these kids out in this field, and all coaches are watching who's the fastest, who's strongest, who's courageous, right? Well, I was the kind of guy that I sat back and I let guys pick the kids they wanted, and then I took the kids they didn't want, right? Now, show you what that means to me. To me, I wanted to teach life. I didn't just want to teach a sport. Right. Subsequently, from that football league, I created a youth program. The 707 was actually founded back in like 2011. And what I would do is that I will feed the kids that were most at risk into my youth program for the summer. I found 7 guys that we called ourselves the 7 Seed. Right. And there was a gym called May Fitness in Davidson County. They allow me to utilize the space, and I will bring these kids, and I will bring different speakers in front of them, and we would do physical activity for 30 minutes. And then the next hour, it would be nothing but educational, right? I had over 100 kids one summer in the program. Again, I have to touch it, feel it, and see it. So because of my lived experience, I knew that it was important to not just teach a sport or coach a sport. It was also important, instrumental to transfer that over to life. Give you one example. I had one kid nobody wanted. Last name was Green. This is 2015. This kid wanted to be a running back, but he was blind in one eye. All right. We're talking about 7 to 8-year-old kids now. His entire upbringing, he was taught that he had a disability. Well, I knew, and I looked past the disability, and I knew that he wanted something, that he wanted to just try. Just let me try and see if I can. Long story short, we won the championship 4 years in a row, and Mr. Green was my starting running back, blind on his left eye. Now, take the sport out of it. Take the sport out of it, and just take a young person who is now, he's in college, for God's sake. Do you not understand the impact that belief in that little boy, that we all started cheering for him, because once people knew that he was blind, nobody knew he was blind in one eye except his parents, my coaches, and me. But when people would see this boy running that ball, nobody knew he was blind. But his entire life, all the way to 7 years old, he was told, you have a disability. Well, no, that's your superpower. That is your superpower. That there's strength in that. The goal for me is to empower our youth. The goal for me is to create generations that I may not get to see that will take this message that I'm giving you today and they'll carry it with them. How do I do that? Through wisdom and humility, right? Through wisdom and humility. That is the only way to lead. You know, show me a good leader and I'll show you somebody who has wisdom and that has humility in them in everything that they do. And I'm not saying that we're all have it right away. I can only tell you that I was the kind of person that if I was right, I was going to get in the room and tell you I was right. You know, I've learned that to be right is to be humble and to be wise. Mm-hmm. You know, only a fool knows all of the answers to all of the questions. Some of us have to experience in order to have the answer. I had to experience being able to be all of the things that I went through, all of my ACEs, my adverse childhood experiences shaped me into who I become. Now, when I walk into rooms, I'm a 45-year-old. And if I'm in Tennessee, somewhere in the South, they'll see me and they'll say, that's an African-American male. Well, let's just go with that for a second, right? I'm not African-American. I'm Latino. I'm Afro-Latino, right? Which is something I'm very proud of. And I carry that very well. My goal is to ensure that when I see young people that look like me, that they understand that there is so much more for us to do, so much work to do other than just complaining about what we don't have. You know, the day after the State of the Union, I was at the Capitol for our Day on the Hill. I got to say thank you to the governor for expanding the Boys and Girls Club funding by $10.6 million. That's going to make an impact. It doesn't matter what they're doing and that's having a negative. What is the positive? How do I bring that back? Because I can't change everything that you do. But the things that you do well, how do I take that back? How am I a mentor and an advocate if I can't marry all of those things? So we have to be resourceful. We have to be knowledgeable. And we have to be intentional.
Dominique had asked you, what would you want if you had unlimited resources? And you said more funding. But hearing you speak, I'm realizing you can have funding in a program and not have a leader like you, like someone who wakes up every day, is tired and says, okay, I'm going to still give it my all.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I agree in the sense of, for me, the funding is important, but also the tangibles, right? Because you can go get the funding. Leadership is important, but leadership that believes in reaching back, right? The one thing in everything that I work on locally is I'm looking for young people to come and be a part of. There, it goes back to the wisdom and the humility. I can't do this by myself. I need a team to do this. And I need younger people who are understanding of what TikTok is and Instagram and Facebook is to get this word out, because there's already enough messaging out there that's negative and it overpopulates us as opposed to the positive, right? Mm-hmm. That is really important that we do have leaders that understand that are not apprehensive or not cold or not jaded by their lived experience, but people who can take people from all walks of life. Every time, matter of fact, this past Friday, when I walked in that room and I looked up before we signed the document, I looked and I saw older African-American women, 6 of them. I saw white older gentlemen in the room. I saw executives from the University of Cumberland University in the room, but I also saw young white males and young Black males. And how do we do that collectively? Because it takes a community to change some of our circumstances, right? If you look at the state of Tennessee, you have 95 counties. Out of those 95 counties, we have 8 metros. Outside of that 8 metros, the rest of the counties are rural. And when you go into these rural communities, and I'm speaking from lived experience, I've done projects in over 65 counties out of 95. I've done partnerships and actual meaningful projects in every facet of this community. You have poor white, you have poor Black, you have poor Hispanic, you have support all around us. You have needs all around us. Some of us work in different facets, whether it is, some people may be doing public health from the aspect of hypertension education. That's impacting our community, or colorectal cancer, for example. I'm attacking it from the mental health perspective. And I know many of us who are doing this work to support it. And I know many great leaders. So we do need more of that, to your point.
Was there anyone in your life who mentioned or supported you when you were younger, and how did they influence you?
When I read that question, I didn't have to think far. On December the 14th of last year, I lost my godmother. I had to go do the eulogy at her funeral. She was a correctional officer for over 35 years in the city of Miami. She was somebody who taught me how to read the Bible. She lived next door to us, and I was a kid that would run away from home. I didn't meet my biological mother till I came to the United States of America. She left us with my grandmother. My grandmother raised 23 of us before I came to the United States. So the language you hear me speaking right now, I had to learn. And I had to learn that in a very harsh environment, in an environment where bullying was immediate. We're talking about the late 80s, early 90s, at the height of the cocaine and crack epidemic that hit our cities across the United States. That's the environment that I grew up in. I was 12 years old when I ran away for the 8th time. And I remember she came to pick me up and found me in the city. And she put me in her car, and she told me that God had a promise for my life, that I didn't need to be scared. And I lived with her from the age of 12 till I was 17. And I remember that night when she took me home, it was the first time that somebody had held me outside of my grandmother, who had passed on by then, that I knew that I was going to be okay. And I shared all of my fears with her. I said that I didn't know what it was going to be like to be 21, or what I lived to see 21. I told her that, hey, look all around us. There's destruction. There's poverty all around us. Like, how do you come out of this? Like, how do you survive? And she said, you will. You will. And then God is going to use you to do other things. And you're going to look back at this time in life, and you're going to be thankful that you listened to what I'm telling you. October the 6th was the last time I talked to her. There was a hurricane that had hit Tennessee, as y'all know, and it hit East Tennessee very bad in the tri-states. She called me and she asked me, was I okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And I said, hey, I got a surprise for you. I'll be coming home in December. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that was the last time I would be speaking to her. My surprise to her was that I had graduated with my master's degree in May, and that she will be able to meet my wife and our son named Zion, and she was going to get to hold an extension of me. That woman, her love was so pure that it extended past me. When I got to Miami, I heard so many stories of her paying people's rent, of her getting some of the top drug dealers, once they exited the prison, how she put them into programs, that one of them ended up having one of the largest trucking companies in Miami. I got to hear stories that I didn't know anything about. I also got to hear how she went to the district attorney when there were people that were trying to cause me harm because I had gotten involved into some things. And she went to the district attorney and said, if he does something, if he harms someone, it's because somebody's trying to harm him. I didn't know that story till she was gone. We do things a little different in Miami. We had 3 parties on behalf of her name because she was the life of the party. In the park, in the middle of the city, we had over 350 people that showed up, and we had a semi-truck pull up and play her life in front of us. And I had to see a lot of pictures of me with her when I was a little boy. She used to take me everywhere. I was known as her son. That's how she would introduce me. And it was the proudest moment when I got the phone call from my god sister, who is a lieutenant in the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. She called me and said, you need to come home because you have to do the eulogy. She wrote down in her book that she had one biological child and a non-biological son, and her son would do the eulogy at the church. In that church, there were over 400 people that showed up. and she was taken into the cemetery in horse and carriage. Now, you tell me if that wasn't a going home celebration. But it's because the life that she lived, she is the only person that I can say honestly lived the Bible before me. I wasn't the only kid that she picked up off the street. There are other 7 people just like me, and when we were there and I had to do that eulogy, everybody walked up there with me. All of her best friends, all of the kids that called her mama. I just happened to be the one that she loved very much. That kind of love, I want somebody else to feel that kind of love. Even if it's just for a moment, especially our young men who are so broken. I'm not saying our young women aren't. What I'm saying is we're called to be the backbones of our families. We're called to stand our communities up. That's what we're called to do. And we've been so deviated. And people like her are people that keep us focused. She kept me focused. The reason I went to the military was because of her. She said, you need to leave Miami. If you don't leave Miami, you're going to either be dead or incarcerated. That's what you've chosen. I took my GED February 1998. By March 30th of 1998, I was going to the Army. And it's the best decision that I've ever made, but it was made by her for me. It was made by her for me. So again, it all goes back to feeling it and touching it. I tell people oftentimes that just because you're connected to somebody on social media doesn't mean that you're connected. She was a person that she would pick up the phone. When I was in crisis in 2018, I was going through a very critical time in my life. She called me out of the blue and said, are you okay? I said, no. She said, I need you to get on a plane tomorrow. I bought a ticket and I need you to come home. I got on that plane and I went home and I was there with her for a week. She fed me. She took care of me. She loved on me. She told me everything was going to be okay. But how did she know to pick up that phone and call me? How did she know that? There's only one way. It brings me back to believing that there is a higher power within all of us. And if we just, regardless of what the valleys are, stay in that frame of mind, always available to do good, then we will be used. But if we're always on the self-absorbed and pain that we may be experiencing or our own individual challenge, be prepared to stay there for a very long time. But if you're looking to do good, good will come to you. Because I'm telling you, ever since, matter of fact, the Boys and Girls Club, I started the Y program because of her. People are making donations on behalf of that right now. The Y Project is where you get to acknowledge somebody who made a difference, who made an impact in your life. I wrote the fundraising campaign for it. I'm making my first contribution on behalf of her name. It's going to be a scholarship. Now, that woman has never been to Tennessee. You follow me? She's never stepped in Tennessee. How much of an impact did she make?
But she's in Tennessee.
But she's in Tennessee. Exactly. She's never been to Tennessee, but she's in Tennessee. And when we open up the Boys and Girls Club of Wilson County, all of her family is in law enforcement. My god sister's a lieutenant in the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, as I shared. Her nephew's a captain in the fire department. All of those people are flying up here when we cut the ribbon of the Boys and Girls Club of Wilson County. Now, they never been to Tennessee, but Miami is coming to Tennessee.
Wow.
Now that is something worth sharing. And that is something that I hope and I pray that my life has been meaningful enough that there will be somebody somewhere that will say, man, it makes you feel warm inside. I was just with the Titans doing a commercial that was aired across the entire state for the Super Bowl. Well, I'm utilizing that influence to fund this project for the Wilson County Boys and Girls Club. That's how it works.
So I've learned 2 things from you, Mr. Garcia, that I had to write down because I was just so in tune. I had to write it down because I was like, you're going to forget, girl. You got to write it down. So the first thing was what we need more in the community, which is we need our older people. We need our older people and our younger people to be together more in this community. You said we need the TikTok, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think we need the wisdom and the younger generation bringing in, I don't want to say the culture, but what's going on currently that older people are out of tune of. Like, we need each other.
Yeah,
and
put
another thing,
humility right next to that. I know you have wisdom. Put humility right next to that. Yeah.
The other thing that I wrote down was lessons learned go beyond you. Like you were saying, how you're outreaching these young men, but like hearing you talk, it made me realize just how deep advocacy and empowerment goes. Like you may reach one young man, but if it successfully works, it's reaching generations after him as well. So that's something I learned from you that I just never really thought about until after hearing you speak. So you're reaching me. So you're reaching me, and I hope I can reach other people.
Absolutely. When you set the bar, everybody learns, including yourself, when you set the bar. So what is the bar? Right? For example, the 707 program, the bar was to ensure that we don't lose any children. Right? Everybody came into the room with that mindset. How do we do that? Right? Wisdom and leadership understands that we all come into this room and the goal is for everybody to walk away with something. Right? There were adults that were there that didn't know how to be good fathers. There were men that were there that didn't know how to, here they are. They're pushing this sport, this football, this basketball, this baseball, whatever that ball is. And when they were in the room and they heard this, they understood, hey, instead of me reaching back and saying, hit somebody harder, let me reach back and say, man, you did a good job today, son. Let's go get some ice cream. Because fast forward, you want to be able to sit down with that same young man in his 20s and him feel comfortable enough to call you when he needs you. But if you're reaching back and everything is a scream and a yell and an expectation of being greater and being better, and there's no vulnerability on both sides, you won't have that relationship. So whenever I hear people saying we need to invite old needs to come in with wisdom.
And young needs to come in willing to receive.
And humility.
Well, both parts. Actually, both parts need to come in willing to receive.
That's right. Because it's not one, it's bilateral. Right? That's something that we need to remember. All of this is bilateral. I came to learn from you all. I came to this podcast with an open mind and an open heart that these young people are wanting to do something meaningful. They're my next generation. What is it that I can learn from them? I don't come in here being a subject matter expert. That's never going to work. I have the flexibility and the know-how to know that I'm always going to be a student. Right? Even after learning. Forever learning. Watch this. I went and got all these degrees. And when I was getting my master's degree, I would come and present projects and they would be like, oh, this will be great. I was like, oh, that's actually the project that I'm currently doing. Right. And then I would share it with those people from around the United States that were going to school virtually. Well, guess what? Because I didn't operate in a silo. I operated in the whole. Those same people took my programs, renamed them, and they're implementing them. That's cool. That's dope.
That is.
You know what I mean? And as the young people tell me, that means we're not crashing out.
I have been hearing that so much. That is so funny. I love that.
How do we not crash out? That's what I was told. I went to go speak at this church that I had created a partnership with. And these are kids from a place called J.C. Napier. And J.C. Napier is a project here in Nashville. So they bust these kids over to this after-school program at Trevecca University, at Trevecca Church, which is on campus. And when I went on stage and I started talking or whatever, I took my jacket off and I'm fully tatted all over. Like, you just can't see any of them. I don't believe in the neck and the face. I've had all my tattoos since I was a young man. And when I came on stage, one of the young guys in the audience said, man, he looked like you'll crash out. So I had to, I like
Why are
stopped.
kids so funny?
Yeah, I had to but it was so honest. It was in the middle of the moment, right? So I had to stop. I was like, time out, time out. Somebody explain to me what crash out means.
Yep.
So you just look like, and they explained to me what crashing out was. I was like, that's pretty cool. So how do we not crash out while we're working on things, on projects, meaningful things that'll make an impact? How do we make it to a place where all of us feel warm? When I talk about my godmother, there's a warmth that comes over me because I know what it feels like to be supported, to be covered, to be encouraged, no matter. And I was a kid that was tagged these tags. Before I came to the United States, I was an alien. I still have my ID. I was an immigrant alien. That's a tag, is it not? Right? Thereafter, I was tagged as too violent. I was tagged as a menace to the educational system. Now, mind you, what about if I would have believed all those tags that were said about me? In reflection, I look at my best friend and I can see him just like I'm talking to you right now. And I lost him when we were in our teen years, right? Because we grew up really fast. We had cars by then. We were, in and out the club and so forth and so on. But in reflection, he believed what he was tagged. He believed that he was a thug, a menace to the society. He believed that he was a menace to the educational system, kicked out of school. We both got kicked out at the same time. He decided to not go back. He decided the streets and drugs was going to be his way because he was told that's who you are. I decided to believe opposite, right? I decided to believe that I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a poet. I love spoken word. Been doing spoken word since I was a teen,
And you also had somebody to pour into you young as well. Mm-hmm. And what did you say earlier? You had somebody to introduce you to God earlier. You had a mentor. Mm-hmm. So it does matter. Mm-hmm.
She was my audience. I would encourage us to become audiences of one another. Mm-hmm. She was my audience. She was the person that I would read my poetry to. She was the person that when I wanted to say, hey, I got a message. How do I deliver that message? I wrote it down. She would tell me, write it down and we'll do it over dinner tonight. How cool. Now here I am. I get in front of kids and stages in front of adults. I'm a keynote speaker this week coming up at a Davidson County Mental Health Conference. Now I get to be the guy that delivers that message. But again, that was training. She trained me to be able to do that, right? She made me okay to be comfortable in my own skin, to know when to hit this or take this note higher or lower, or the message needs to connect with the audience. How do you do that? Are you reading your audience? Are you losing your audience? It goes back to what does the word say? Train a child in the way they should go, right? That's exactly what she did. And now I get to feed that back into the community in meaningful ways. Y'all heard of Cups, just a bit of some of the things that I get to do, which is really cool. I also get to do a lot of strategic thinking. I'm a strategic thinker. So while you're thinking of one chess piece, I'm thinking of the whole board, right? Some of us need to think ahead past the first thing. For example, if you're working on a project in your local community, and this is for those people that are out there listening to that podcast, can you tell me what their project looks like at the end of 4 to 5 years? Don't just think about the now when you gather people around an issue, but what does the outcome look like? The intentionality of that is something that is my gifting. It's something that God has empowered me to be able to do. So I know exactly what pieces to bring together to make it successful, right? But it all goes back to wisdom and humility. Back to being a student. Remember, we always walk into the room ready and able to learn. Mm-hmm. Ready and able to learn. I may have a strategic plan, but if I'm not open to your ideas, where is my wisdom? Where is my humility, right? Because you may look at public health completely different than me. Out of all of the careers that I've had, public health is one that it is the only career that I've had where I truly see that there is an opportunity to collaborate, to do meaningful things. I'm not saying other careers don't have that aspect of it, but public health, in my lived experience, and I've been in military, healthcare, administration, private sector, and public sector. Public health is one of those. Mental health, to me, is adjacent to public health in a very meaningful way because, again, it attacks something that we can't see, right? Meaning that you are directly impacting something that we can't see, right? We don't know what the state of your mental health is in this conversation. You don't know the state of my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
However,
I'm feeling good now.
Right? Right? See?
Like you said, you gave me a little boost. Like I didn't
Right.
come into this podcast expecting to get so much out of it, but it's like you kind of lit a little fire under my butt.
Yeah, it does. That's what it's supposed to do. Again, it's something that I can't see. I don't know what you're experiencing. What I do know is this morning, I prayed. I took my time out to regroup, to regather. My morning didn't start out as perfect as I wanted it to be, right? But I'm hopeful. And that's what we introduced, right? And even in the mental health sector, every health aspect looks at what? Data, right? So in the mental health sector, why is the reason why we're having this podcast? We need more what? We need more people to go into this field that look like the communities that are most at risk, most underserved, and most in need, right? That's what this looks to do. So I came into this saying, man, I want to charge these young people to continue, to not quit, to keep moving forward, for them to know that there's somebody on the other side of this education that they're looking at seeking that is already doing it, and know that we need you. And we need you, and we need you desperately. That's why when I got the phone call about this podcast, I jumped at it because this is not my first time speaking to Memphis University. This is my third time. I come before the public health students and spoken to them virtually as well. I'm reaching out to these institutions because y'all need to hear from us that are on the other side. I have 21 years in this field, right? Some of you all are probably just getting up there to your 25, 26, 27. My oldest son is 27 years old, and I want you all to know that, yeah, it is. There's possibilities, and the possibilities are endless, and the need is tremendous. Our communities are at risk. We're seeing it play across our live TVs. We have to be intentional to figure out what's happening with our young people. Because even though they're connected, and I go back to the social medias, they're so disconnected. I walk in schools and I'm intentional with, I'm shaking hands. I'm looking at you in your eyes. I want to talk to you. Hey, this is a conversation. This is not a lecture. Everybody, what does mental health mean? Let's talk about it. Let's reduce the stigma and let's encourage these people to pursue you. I want to see you all on a podcast one day. I want to see you share your message. I want to see you empower young women of color. I want to see you on a TED Talk. That's the leader in me. That's the wisdom in me. That's the maturity that I've done it so long that, man, I got to see more behind me coming, because sometimes I feel like I'm alone. When I walk into a room, literally, primarily, this is what I would always see. I would always see people who didn't look like me, that were trying to help a community that looked like me. I'm not saying that they didn't have the right intentions. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. What I am saying is we need to see more of us.
It matters. It does.
It does. It does. I'm telling you, because a lot of those young men speak to me because of this exterior and what they hear, right? And this compassion and this passion that I want you to be okay. That I understand you might not have a daddy at home, that I understand that your grandfather was incarcerated, that your brother, that your uncle and your father is. I understand that your grandmother is raising you. I understand that it may be your auntie or your sister or your cousin raising you. I understand that. Now, how do we come out of that? We can only come out of it by those who are seeking and have the ways to get a better education to come back to the communities that they're from and serve. That's the only way.
And I would say, to add on to that, come into this community, this field authentically. That's something I've been learning. Like if you coming into this field with blue hair, or you coming in a certain way, then you should stay that way, because clearly that's the way God made you, and you're going to reach more people that look like you that way than coming into this profession thinking you have to look a certain way to be a professional. That's something I've learned.
There are two
recently.
things that you can't change. You can't change your culture and your lived experience. You can't change those things. And the mental health field has been the only field that I've seen where your lived experience is a benefit, right? So your lived experience, whatever that may be. So for me, I was an at-risk youth, right? So I went through all of the trials and tribulations of understanding what is suspending getting look like, what is violence look like, what is gun violence, what are all my ACEs, right? And then that lived experience, I get to package in the mental health field to help somebody else not experience those things. People with lived experience have meaningful contributions in the mental health field to help alleviate the pressures that some of our families are under. Hey, here I am. I went through it, and I don't want to see you do it. So since I don't want to see you do it, let me tell you how to get to it. How do you get to your phase of success? Here are some of the things that you can do. That's what therapy, counseling, mental health stigma reduction education provides for our communities.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to go ahead and transition us. This conversation has been really, really good. I do want to keep going, but I also have to be cognizant of the time we have on our podcast.
Yeah.
But seriously, Mr. Garcia, thank you for all of the wisdom and the insight that you've shared with us. And one thing that I personally enjoyed, I mentioned earlier, just your passion, but also the love, the grace, and compassion that you have for the community that you work with. Not just to get them places or to see their goals succeed, but you care about them as a person, regardless of what it is they want to do and whatever it is that they wish to achieve. You just want the best for them. And we can see that through the stories that you've shared. We can hear it just in we can truly hear your heart. And I know if we can hear it and feel it over this short, hour that we've had, I know for a fact that the people you serve and work with are truly able to hear your heart behind the work that you do as well. So I do just want to again say thank you, and I cannot wait for this this episode to be released, because I know it's just going to be a blessing to so many people. As we've already shared, it's been a blessing to us as well.
Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to our podcast, brought to you by the Smart Connections podcast from the Smart Center at the University of Memphis, as well as the Pathways to Behavioral Health Careers Project. If you or anyone you know needs any information from the Smart Center, please contact us at 901-678-1636 or email us at smartcenter@memphis.edu. You can also learn more about us at our website, memphis.edu/smartcenter.